My name is Claire Bennett, and until that afternoon, I thought I knew exactly what my life was. A quiet town in Ohio, a husband who worked hard, a son who gave my days meaning, and a mother who lived only a few blocks away. But all of that cracked open the moment I turned onto my mother's street and saw a familiar blue pickup sitting in her driveway. Ethan was in the back seat, his head bent over a handheld game, completely oblivious to the storm rising in my chest. My palms went damp on the steering wheel. That was Daniel's truck. My husband wasn't supposed to be here. He was supposed to be working on a renovation project across town. I pulled over across the street, my breath shallow, my thoughts scattering in 100 directions. "Why are we stopping?" Ethan asked, glancing up from his game. His voice was so innocent it made the silence heavier. I forced a smile that felt like it might crack my face. "Just give me a minute," I whispered. Every instinct screamed at me, not to go up to that door, not to ring the bell, not to announce myself. Instead, I opened the car door and motioned for Ethan to follow me. We circled around the side of the house, the autumn leaves crunching beneath our shoes. The kitchen window was half open, and the voices drifting out froze me in place. "She's so broken, Linda. Always crying, always needy. I can't take it anymore." Daniel's voice. The voice I'd fallen in love with at 19, now sharp as glass against my heart. My mother's laugh followed low and satisfied. "I told you she was too weak for you, too damaged, but you didn't listen." Ethan's small hand slipped into mine, squeezing tight, as if he sensed that something terrible was happening. I pressed a finger to my lips, begging him with my eyes not to make a sound, even as my world fractured in front of me. The insurance money from her father's death made it worth it for a while. Daniel went on, his tone almost casual. "But now it's nearly gone. I'm done playing the doting husband to someone so pathetic." My knees buckled. The money my father left us, the money I believed was being saved for Ethan's future, it had been nothing but fuel for their betrayal. "What are you going to do about her?" my mother asked almost eagerly. "Leave her. Take everything. She won't fight me. She never does." Something inside me snapped then, not into pieces, but into something sharper, colder, more dangerous. I pulled Ethan back toward the car, my pulse hammering in my ears. They thought I was weak. They thought I was finished. They had no idea who they had just awakened. That morning had seemed ordinary, almost perfect, the kind of day that slips by unnoticed, because it feels so safe. I woke up to the faint sound of birds outside our bedroom window, and the smell of fresh coffee drifting in from the kitchen. Daniel always brewed it before leaving for work, and that small gesture had become one of the pillars of what I believed was our marriage. I walked in wearing my old robe hair in a loose knot, and he was already dressed in his work boots and navy shirt, smiling at me like he had every day for more than a decade. "Morning, beautiful," he said, pressing a kiss to my temple. The warmth of it sent that familiar flutter through me, the same one I'd felt the night we first danced together. Ethan stumbled into the kitchen a few minutes later, still half asleep, his dark hair sticking up in every direction. He grabbed a piece of toast, mumbling a quick morning mom with crumbs scattering across the counter. Daniel ruffled his hair and laughed. "Slow down, buddy. Your mom's right, breakfast isn't running away." I remember standing there, coffee in hand, staring at the two of them. My heart swelled with gratitude and relief, as though all the harsh words from my mother growing up, all the doubts I carried about not being good enough, were silenced by the sight of my family sitting around that worn oak table. Later that day at the library, the comfort continued in its quiet way. I shelved new books, helped an elderly man look through genealogy records, and guided a young mother to a shelf full of picture books for her toddler. I felt useful, steady, like my small role in the world mattered. Even when my mother's voice echoed in the back of my mind, "You're weak, Claire. You'll never hold on to anything good." I brushed it aside. I had Daniel. I had Ethan. I had a life. When I came home that evening, Daniel arrived later than usual. He looked tired, his shirt dusted with what I assumed was drywall powder. Though when I reached for his jacket, he pulled it away quickly with a smile. "Don't worry, it's filthy. I'll hang it in the garage." I thought nothing of it at the time. Why would my husband's working late was normal? Busy projects, long hours, this was the life we'd built together. Yet even in that seemingly ordinary moment, something in his eyes flickered. I felt it, a shadow crossing the warmth I trusted. I brushed it off with a laugh, focusing on Ethan's chatter about school, but somewhere deep inside me, a seed of unease settled. At the time, I couldn't name it. I couldn't imagine the shape it would take. But looking back now, I realize that was the first whisper of the storm about to consume everything. The weeks that followed blurred together in the same routine, yet something about it began to feel off. Daniel started coming home later, and later, sometimes well past 10, claiming a big project was falling behind schedule. I wanted to believe him. I told myself the exhaustion in his voice was just the weight of responsibility. But when I looked at his boots one evening, they were spotless. No mud, no dust, nothing that spoke of construction sites. My stomach tightened, but I forced a smile when he caught me staring. "Long day," he muttered, pressing a quick kiss to my cheek before disappearing into the shower. I stood alone in the kitchen watching the clock tick, trying to drown out the voice in my head, whispering that something wasn't right. At the library, I overheard two women chatting near the front desk. They didn't notice me standing in the next aisle. "Did you see Daniel at the diner yesterday?" one of them asked. He was with an older woman. They looked pretty cozy. I froze. My chest burned as though someone had lit a match inside me. An older woman. My mother's face shot through my mind, but I shook it off immediately. It was absurd. Daniel and my mother had never been close. They respected each other, yes, but that was all. Still, the words lodged in my chest and refused to leave. That evening, when I mentioned it casually, Daniel laughed too quickly. Probably just someone who looked like me. Small-town gossip travels faster than the wind. He brushed it off, pulled me into his arms, and told me not to worry. I wanted so badly to believe him that I buried my doubts deep, like shoving dirty laundry into the back of a closet. But little things kept piling up. He guarded his phone like it was a weapon, even taking it into the bathroom. He changed the passcode without telling me. When I asked, he kissed my forehead and joked, "What, don't you trust me?" His eyes didn't quite meet mine. And my mother, she seemed to know details about Daniel's projects. I'd never told her. "How's that big renovation he's working on?" she asked, over the phone, her tone too casual. I laughed nervously, unsure if she'd heard it around town or somewhere closer. I tried to hold the pieces of my world together, telling myself I was imagining things, that paranoia was worse than the truth. But late at night, lying in bed beside a man who suddenly felt like a stranger, I couldn't silence the pounding question in my head. What if the life I trusted was nothing but a lie? It was a Thursday in early November, when the truth finally ripped through the fragile walls I had built. Ethan had a half day at school, and as we sat together at the kitchen table, he asked if we could visit Grandma Linda. I hesitated, but agreed, thinking it might be good for him. We drove the 20 minutes to her house, the trees burning gold and red along the road, the air crisp with the promise of winter. When I turned the corner onto her street, my hands tightened around the wheel. Daniel's truck was parked in her driveway, unmistakable, the blue paint catching the late afternoon sun. My stomach dropped. He was supposed to be at work. "Isn't that Dad's truck?" Ethan asked, his voice curious, but light. "Yeah." I managed forcing calm into my tone. "It is." Every instinct told me not to knock, not to walk through that door. Instead, I parked across the street and led Ethan quietly around, to the backyard, my pulse hammering so loudly, I was sure he could hear it. We crouched beneath the kitchen window. The one I knew carried sound clearly. The voices inside sliced through the autumn air. "She's so broken, Linda. Always crying, always needy. I can't take it anymore." "Daniel, I warned you not to marry her," my mother replied, her tone smug. "She was never strong enough. Too damaged." My knees buckled, and Ethan's small hand gripped mine tighter than ever. "The insurance money from her father kept me around for a while," Daniel continued. "But it's almost gone. I'm finished pretending. My father's legacy. The money I believed was safe for Ethan's future, it had been their prize all along. I'll leave her. Take everything Daniel said. She won't fight. She never does." They laughed then. My husband. My mother. Their cruelty echoed through the glass through my chest, tearing me apart. Something inside me broke, but not in the way they imagined. From the shards rose something sharper, colder. I pulled Ethan away, whispering that we were going home. My face was calm, my voice steady, but inside I was already making a vow. They thought I was weak. They were about to learn just how wrong they were. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay in bed next to Daniel, listening to the even rhythm of his breath, and felt a cold distance settle between us. He shifted once, murmuring something incoherent in his sleep, and I stared at the ceiling, wondering how many nights he had lain here beside me while planning my destruction. By morning, I was hollowed out but clear-headed. While Daniel took Ethan to school the next day, I walked into our small home office and pulled open the filing cabinet he always insisted on managing. My hands shook as I flipped through folders, bank statements, mortgage papers, old tax returns. The numbers told the truth I had been too blind to see. Money had been drained in chunks, thousands at a time, some withdrawn in cash, others funneled into an account I didn't recognize. My father's insurance payout, the money meant for Ethan's future, was nearly gone. I sat there until the sun climbed high, tears blurring the figures on the page, until the grief burned away and left something colder behind. They thought I would collapse under the weight of betrayal. They didn't realize betrayal can carve a new kind of strength. That afternoon, I drove to the bank. The tellers greeted me by name, smiling warmly, unaware of the storm in my chest. I asked to see a manager, and when she brought out records, my suspicion turned to certainty. The unfamiliar account was real, jointly held by Daniel and my mother. My own signature had been forged to authorize transfers. I felt the floor tilt beneath me, but I managed a polite smile and told her I just needed a balance check. The next stop was the library, though not for work. I used a computer there away from our home Wi-Fi to research divorce law, financial fraud, and child custody. The legal language was dense, but I read until my eyes ached. I learned that deception and forgery, even between spouses, could be criminal. And I knew I could prove it. Still, knowledge alone wasn't enough. I needed evidence. That evening, after Ethan went to bed, I drove to a small electronics store and bought a voice recorder, the kind college students use in lectures, and a tiny wireless camera disguised as a home security device. I hid them in my purse, my heart racing like I was smuggling contraband. Back home, I locked myself in the bathroom and stared at the mirror. The woman looking back at me seemed like a stranger, hair tied back, the same old way, no makeup lines of exhaustion around her eyes. But behind that worn face, I saw a flicker of something new. Determination. Fury. The kind of strength my mother had sworn I never had. For the first time in years, I didn't see weakness. I saw a woman ready to fight. The following days, I became an actress in my own life. I smiled at Daniel's jokes, cooked his favorite dinners, let him believe I was still the grateful wife. I even called my mother, my voice light and needy, inviting her for dinner. She accepted with a tone so smug I wanted to spit, but I thanked her sweetly, hiding the recorder in my pocket before hanging up. Every laugh I faked, every nod I gave was another brick in the trap I was building. They thought I was a mouse, trembling in a corner. But I was patient, methodical, and angrier than they could ever imagine. When I lay in bed at night, I no longer cried. Instead, I planned. I envisioned every step of their downfall, rehearsing it like a script. By the time I drifted to sleep, I no longer felt like the Claire they remembered. That woman was gone. I was something new. 2 weeks later, over dinner, I set the bait. The roast simmered on the table, the red wine glinted in Daniel's glass, and I slipped into the role of the adoring wife one last time. "I got a call today," I said casually, twirling my fork like it was any other evening. The insurance company found an error in Dad's policy. There might be an additional payout, $50,000, maybe more. Daniel nearly choked on his wine. His eyes darted to mine, then away, his jaw tightening as he tried to mask the panic with excitement. "That's incredible, sweetheart. Really incredible." I smiled, pretending not to notice the way his hand trembled slightly as he set his glass down. I knew exactly what was spinning through his head, another pile of money, to steal, another reason to delay leaving me. Perfect. That night, long after Ethan was asleep, I lay still in bed while Daniel slipped out of the room. I followed at a distance, recorder in hand, and caught his whispered voice in the kitchen. "Linda, it's me. We have a problem. She says there's more insurance money coming, another 50 grand. No, she doesn't suspect a thing. She's too stupid to put it together. We'll just have to wait until it clears." His words cut deep, but instead of breaking me, they steeled me. I pressed the recorder tighter in my palm, knowing I had captured the evidence I needed. They weren't just planning to betray me. They were so blinded by greed, they couldn't see the net closing in around them. Over the next days, I played the perfect part. I laughed at Daniel's jokes, listened to my mother's smug advice, even baked Ethan's favorite cookies, as though nothing at all was wrong. But beneath the surface, every smile was another step closer to their ruin. The night before I filed the papers, Daniel kissed me goodnight and whispered, "I love you." I stared into the darkness, silent, my mind already miles ahead. Love was dead. Trust was ashes. All that remained was justice. By dawn, I was ready. Ready to end the charade. Ready to show them the woman they had underestimated. The morning light spilled across the kitchen table as I signed the final page of the divorce papers. My lawyer, a sharp-eyed woman named Diane Walsh, slid them into a folder with practiced ease. "By the end of today, the accounts will be frozen. He won't be able to touch a cent," she said. I nodded, a steady calm filling me where fear had once lived. When I left her office, I didn't go home. Instead, I sat in a cafe across town, a cup of coffee cooling in front of me. My phone buzzed at 9:47. It was Officer Miller from the Riverside Police Department. "Mrs. Bennett, your husband's been served. He's upset, very upset. We need your statement." By the time I arrived at the station, I could hear Daniel's voice echoing from down the hall, loud and desperate. "She's crazy. She's unstable. She's lying about everything." Officer Miller guided me into a quiet room, and I laid out everything. The forged bank records, the photos from the motel, the recordings of Daniel and my mother plotting to strip me of everything. With each document I slid across the table, the officer's expression grew more severe. "This is solid," he said finally. "Fraud, forgery, conspiracy. We'll be bringing them both in." When they escorted Daniel past me, his face was red with rage, his voice breaking. "You think you've won, Claire? You think anyone's going to believe you?" I looked him straight in the eye, my voice steady, colder than he'd ever heard it. "They don't have to believe me. I have proof." An hour later, they brought my mother in. Linda wouldn't meet my gaze, She clutched her purse like it might shield her from what she had done. For the first time in my life, I saw something other than contempt in her eyes. I saw fear. Walking out of that police station, I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel victorious. I felt free. For the first time in years, I could breathe without the weight of their lies pressing on my chest. But freedom was only the beginning. The real work, rebuilding, healing, and proving to my son that strength could rise even from betrayal, was still ahead. The trial came months later, but the outcome was never in doubt. The evidence was overwhelming, airtight. Daniel sat hunched at the defendant's table, his once confident shoulders slumped under the weight of what he had done. He pled guilty to fraud and forgery, accepting 3 years in prison rather than face a jury. My mother received 18 months for her part in the scheme. Neither of them looked at me when the sentences were read. Neither of them apologized. Ethan and I moved into a small apartment across town, not glamorous but ours. It was filled with mismatched furniture and secondhand curtains, yet it felt warmer than any house I'd ever lived in. At night, I helped him with homework at the kitchen table, and he sometimes whispered, "I'm glad it's just us now, Mom." His words hurt and healed all at once. I returned to the library full-time. My coworkers, once just colleagues, became friends who carried me through the long days. Slowly, I built a life that was mine, untouched by Daniel's deceit or my mother's bitterness. Sometimes people asked if I regretted pressing charges against my own mother. I never hesitated with my answer. I didn't destroy my family. They did that themselves. All I did was refuse to be their victim. 5 years have passed since that November day, and Ethan is taller than me now, preparing for college. I've traveled, I've laughed, I've lived a life they never thought I was capable of. And when I look in the mirror, I no longer see the broken, needy woman they mocked. I see someone who survived betrayal, who rose from it stronger. The greatest revenge was never sending them to prison. The greatest revenge was thriving without them. Thank you for watching. If you enjoy these family drama and revenge stories, please subscribe and join me for more every day.